These are the speaker tapes of Fifth Dimension Young People's Group Alcoholics Anonymous, a virtual group meeting every night at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. Enjoy.
Hi guys, I'm Cardi Z and I'm an alcoholic. I have a God-given sobriety date of January 29, 2019, and I always like to say that that's God-given because when I walked into these rooms, the last thing I wanted was y'all stupid sobriety. Welcome to all the newcomers, the guys counting days, celebrating months. Man, I've been there. Right, the way I got to 4 years is by first counting days, then counting months, and then counting years. So I've been there. I know how you feel. I remember clearly what it was like when I walked into these doors. I was scared, I was alone, and I was afraid. I was in delusion. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I had a brain that told me that I did. So I didn't really need to listen to what y'all had to say. That was just my experience. So if you're brand new in here, I also know what kind of attention span that you have, and it's very, very short. So the things that I did to get here was I came in, and when I finally became willing to listen to what everybody else had to say, I got me a sponsor, I got me a big book, and I started working through the steps throughout that book. Still to this day, I still work in that book. I still read that book. I still do what it says in there because I can't maintain the sobriety that I have by doing the stuff that I did yesterday. This is a continuous process. The people that I surround myself with today remind me that when I walk into the room of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm here for one purpose, and that purpose is to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous, nothing else. This isn't social hour for me. This isn't, a popularity contest. This isn't a place for me to sit here and just, lollygaggy and just do a bunch and BS. This is a life or death situation for me. So if I'm not constantly working towards maintaining my sobriety, I will lose it, guaranteed. I have no more power than the person who has 2 days in here. I don't carry that capability. So to tell y'all what it's like, I know typically if you come here a lot, right? Speakers always talk about their childhood and stuff like that. So I don't come from a family of alcoholics. I don't necessarily think my childhood's what created me as to be an alcoholic, because I have 2 other siblings and neither one of them are alcoholic. I always make this joke, right? My sister, we work together and she pops open a bottle of wine to taste it for work. And, she says, "Ooh, this tastes bad." And she throws the entire bottle out into the drain. And I sit there with a very confused look, because whether it's good or it's bad, baby, what are you doing? That's wasting alcohol, right? I'm not the kind of person that sits there for her. She'll pour herself a glass of wine and she'll spin it around and she'll try it, and she says the aromas and the flavors and the pairing and this, right? And that language just sounds weird to me, because when I drink, I don't care about flavors. I don't care about aroma. I don't care about any type of fancy stuff that people talk about when it comes to drinking. I'm drinking for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's the effect, right? The big book tells me I'm irritable, restless, and discontent, and that was me throughout my entire life. What my childhood did for me is it created these character defects that I have walking into the program, and also the character defects that I still possess today if I'm not maintaining my spiritual condition, right? It created me to be selfish, self-centered, dishonest. I was a liar. I was a manipulator. I was a thief. I was a cheater. Man, anything that you could think of, my childhood created me to be, right? I was, when I got here, I was pretty much broken and damaged. The only thing I cared about was trying to fit in with a bunch of people that I didn't care about, because I just didn't like who I was, right? And so I remember walking into treatment, and I went ahead and I identified as alcoholic because, that's what everybody else around me had said. But in reality, I was there to get to stop doing drugs and to figure out how to drink one more time. Right before I got into the treatment center, I had landed myself in a mental institution. Of course, after I came off of a really bad bender and my 3rd attempted suicide, I went into a mental health facility. And in that mental health facility, the doctors told me, you've got depression, and a severe depression disorder. I don't remember the exact terms that he used, but I had a mental health condition, and that was my way out. I said, hell yeah. I left that doctor's office and I was in that institution, and I sat there and immediately started to think about how I was going to take this medication and it was going to work, and how I was going to control my drinking. I figured that if I waited 10 days, I don't know where I got that number from, but I had to wait 10 days before I could start drinking again. So the medication could kick in and I could once again start controlling my drinking. See, that was the thing with me, is I always try to figure out how to control, right? I wasn't ready to stop, and I wasn't ready to admit that I had a problem. I have, oh, somebody's mad. Um, I have this physical allergy, and that's what the book tells me. I have this allergic reaction to alcohol that once I start, I cannot stop. Something happens in my body that doesn't happen to the normal person. And because I can't stop, I have these consequences that happen because of drinking, and what those consequences look like are just all different. And they're going to look different in everybody's life, but I did have consequences. And in the beginning of my drinking, it was fun and it was a party, and I had a great time, man. It got me out of myself, and it allowed me to be around everybody else, and it allowed me to be okay inside. And that's what I liked. And after a time, the drinking started to, get a little bad, and it was fun with some consequences. And then at the very end, it was nothing but consequences. And every time I seemed to want to quit, right? I heard a speaker this past week that I really liked what she had to say. And she said, in my heart, right? In my heart, I really wanted to stop. In my heart, I really wanted to quit. I didn't want to pick back up. And I made these sweet promises time and time again that was it. I was done. But see, my problem centers in my mind, not in my heart, right? And my mind tells me that even though I want to quit, even though I want to stop, even though I don't want to do this anymore, I just can't, right? It convinces me that this time it'll be different. This time it'll be okay. And sometimes it doesn't think of the consequences or even care about the consequences at all. I just pick up a drink. And so when I went into that institution, it was on January 20th. I got out of there on January 26th. And if you heard earlier, or I'm sorry, 22nd. And if you heard earlier, my sobriety date was on the 29th, because as soon as I got out of that institution, I picked up again. And I ended up into a rehab. And the first day of rehab, I'll tell you, I really wanted to stop, man. I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to drug. I didn't want to do any of it. I had come to this place where the book talks about incomprehensible demoralization. I remember sitting in that detox center saying, how did I get here? What did I do wrong? What turn did I, like, what happened? How did I lose this kind of control, man? And I didn't understand it. And after detox, they put me in a residential center. And in that residential center, they gave me a big book, and I didn't really understand the purpose of it, right? It looked like a damn Bible. And I was like, I don't want this. No, take this. But the first couple of days, I didn't bother to touch it. I wasn't messing with it. And once again, this what the book refers to as a mental obsession had returned. And so what I had figured out is that I would sit here with all these people who deem themselves alcoholic, and I would figure out how not to become just like them, right? Because they were living on the streets. They were drinking cheap tequila. They were doing this. They were doing that. They had all I could hear was the horrible war stories of what people had experienced. And I knew damn well I wasn't one of them. There was no way I had the problem like you had the problem. So I just figured that I would sit here and, listen to what everybody else said, and then I would figure out how to put down that drink, or control that drinking, to control my drinking. And then in the somewhere in between, this girl talked about how she was able to, she talked about the book and being able to identify, and she was like, if you read it, like you can understand it, like it's me, it talks about me and what it says and da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot, right? Because at this point, I didn't want to really, follow what was going along. What I really wanted was for her to like me, and this was what she was doing, so I was going to do that too, because maybe if I do that, she'll like me, right? Sometimes my ego is really my best friend, and in the beginning, it's that desire to fit in really did save my ass, y'all. So that's what I did. I got into the book. She gave me a highlighter. I grabbed that highlighter and I started reading. She told me to skip Doctor's Opinion and Bill's Story. I will say that if you're new in here, start at Doctor's Opinion and Bill's Story. They're very important. But I skipped right over those and I jumped into There Is a Solution to More About Alcoholism. And in there I identified. I could understand. I read about me, right? It was talking about these different ways that I tried to control. It talked about how I have this that I'll never be able to regain control, right? And how I'll have these days where I'm sorry, where it starts to talk about this physical allergy and, starting and not being able to stop. And it goes on to, it a little touches on there a little bit about this spiritual experience that I need. And when I remember reading where a part where it breaks down the moderate drinker, the hard drinker, and the real alcoholic. And in there, as soon as I got there, it said moderate drinker, and I knew I didn't classify. And then it got to hard drinker, and I was like, okay, this might be me. And then it said, if I have sufficient reason that I can give it up. And I knew that wasn't me because, see, I had plenty of sufficient reasons to stop drinking. And I tried to stop drinking for those sufficient reasons many times, and it never seemed to work. And then it jumped to real alcoholic, and I wondered where the paragraph was for the middle of that. Right in there, it told me that if I didn't think I was a real alcoholic, to go out and try some controlled drinking. And I got so mad because I was like, you stupid book, hello, that's my problem, I can't control. Right. And coming to the terms that I might actually have the same disease as everybody else in that room, I was really pissed off. I was really angry. And I got really mad at this idea of a higher power. And I yelled and I screamed. I remember going into the shower and just crying and crying and crying because once again, the universe had screwed me over. Once again, you gave me something that I did not want. You made me an outcast when I've already been an outcast my entire life. But I didn't know that back then, that I do know now, is having alcoholism is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me when I find a solution and I follow that solution. If I do have alcoholism and I don't find a solution or do anything about it, I'm absolutely doomed, and it guarantees me that. I have two options. I either get sober or I die. One or the other. There is no option C for me. And so I went through that book and I did what it said in there. And like I said in the beginning, I understand what it's like to be day one, day two. I understand what it's like to be those first couple of months, because combating alcoholism in those first couple of months, and even in that first 2 years, man, it's a bitch. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to y'all. It's not the easiest thing. And if it was, there'd be more people with 30 days, right? 60 days, 90 days. It's not easy. But one thing that I've found throughout Alcoholics Anonymous, the whole purpose of the 12 steps is to get me in touch with a power greater than myself. And I didn't like that shit either. Anytime they said God, and I really thought they were talking about a religious God, anybody who made reference to it, I wanted to slice their throats, because I was not for that. I grew up in a religious home. Y'all could take that God shit. You could shove it up your fucking ass for all I care, right? But the people that I had were absolutely amazing because they told me it was a power of my own conception. See, I got to form that power. I got to form that idea of what I believe was God. And that's where I started. I used to talk to the trees in treatment. And this was a yes, and this was a no. And when the trees went like this, it was the bitch you crazy. And I tell that story and people laugh and they make fun of me, but that was just kind of what I needed to get myself started, right? It was just some type of visual representation and some way for me to hear God talking back to me to get me started. Today, I don't have to talk to the trees, but I still do because I am a little bit crazy. But that belief in a power greater than myself is my greatest asset. I cannot sit here and tell you that the reason why I'm sitting here today is because of my own power, is because of a power greater than myself. And I found that throughout the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the way that I like to explain this to people is what happens is when I get here, there's a tunnel between me and God. And I am blocked, right? There's a bunch of garbage and there's a bunch of trash in between that channel. God can't really come through. I'm irritable, restless, and discontent all the damn time. And as I go through the steps, what happens is I start to throw away some of this trash. I start to get rid of it, and all of a sudden, God can start coming through this tunnel. And then I continue to go through 4 and 5, and some more garbage and some more stuff is uncovered. A lot of these character defects and a lot of these issues and problems that I've been having, they just kind of start getting rid of. And before I know it, I'm on 12. I've had a spiritual experience. The desire to drink has been removed. We read the 9-step promises in the beginning, and like I tell it, I get really frustrated that those are called the AA promises. They're the 9-step promises, man, and I can't have them if I've never gone through 1 through 8. It's that simple. There's always a promise after those steps. And if you read it, I promise you, and you do what it says prior towards that, I promise those promises will come true, right? And so eventually all of this happens. my perception changes. I now I'm starting to build this relationship with a power greater than myself. And I continue to maintain this, right? And it's through those last 10, 11, and 12 where I get to actually maintain my spiritual condition. I love to hear new people come in and say the reason that they went out and started drinking again is because they stopped going to meetings and they stopped calling their sponsor. The big book tells me that resentment is my #1 offender. And it kills more alcoholics than anything else. This is what blocks me from a power greater than myself. So really what happens whenever I start to, before my mental obsession returns, is I catch a resentment and I start to block myself off from the only thing, the only entity in this entire world that has ever been able to keep me sober, and that is a God of my own understanding, right? And if I'm blocked from that, I can't stay sober. So one thing I've always like to reiterate is meetings alone are not going to keep me sober. Just calling my sponsor and just participating in fellowship, those things don't keep me sober. It's working those 12 steps, coming in here and continuing to carry this message, working on myself when I don't want to, right? 6 and 7 is all about turning these character defects over, because see, for some reason, I can't even seem to change my own mind and act right. A lot of times I do want to still sit here and pop off and yell and scream and tell whoever to go F off. And then I politely respond. I find that to be the weirdest shit. But I know that's God's working in my life and not me, right? Because I don't do this stuff. I've spent a little bit of time in sobriety. And what ended up happening as a direct result is I burnt down a really good relationship that I was in. I was engaged. I was, we had gotten a house, we were building a life. And as a direct result of me not working the program, I burned that down. I became manipulative. I was lying. I was cheating. Like all of those things that I did prior towards walking in here, I was still doing, and this was at a little over 2 years sober. So my character defects don't go away just because I put down the bottle. What happens is I don't get to sit here and blame drinking on that anymore. I actually have to own up to that, you know? So I'll wrap up with this. At the end of the day, when I like to speak, I always like to talk about this importance of a higher power, right? Because without it, I am absolutely nothing. And in the beginning, it's not easy to sit there and find it. And in all reality, if you don't like it, well, that sucks, right? But I've been there. And it's okay. You don't have to like this program. You don't have to like the God idea. The purpose of it is just to go through it, right? And in time, as I go through the steps and I do this process, I start to create this own conception that isn't so ugly. It's not so hateful. I don't have so much resentment, and I can start to rely and trust on it, right? At least that's my experience, and that's what I've been through. I always like to tell people, man, I will call God before I call my sponsor. And what I mean by that is if a situation comes up, I pray about it before I pick up the phone, because as much as I would love for my sponsor to be able to keep me sober, it's just not enough. I need divine intervention. I've had divine intervention play a part in my life many times, right? I've had this desire to drink and use. I left a treatment center a little over a year. I had left a meeting in a treatment center. I had about a year and a couple of weeks left, a year and a couple of weeks. And after I had left that treatment center, I was just hopping into meetings, wasn't doing any work. And as a result of that, when we had left the treatment center, I was driving back with my sponsor, and she said, "How are you feeling?" I said, "Honestly, I really want to go get high right now. That's the only thing that I want," right? And I sat there and I saw the look on those people's faces. I saw exactly what it used to be like, and the misery and the depression and the anger and the frustration, and it still wasn't enough to make me not want to go get high at that moment. And having the sponsor that I had, she had me open the book and she had me start working 1, 2, and 3. And we did 1, 2, and 3 right out of that book. And of course, the obsession lifted away. And I went back through my steps. I did my 4, I did my 5, and everything else. I've been through these steps so many times, it's ridiculous. I absolutely hate a 4th step, but I have to be doing a 10th step if I want to avoid that 4th step. So if you're new in here, I promise you it gets easier. I promise you it gets better. But it doesn't get easier and it doesn't get better if you sit down and do absolutely nothing. I guarantee you'll drink time and time again if the only thing you come in here and do is just listen to these speaker meetings. These are great and they help us identify and see where we fit in, but at the same time, they're not enough to create the spiritual experience that I need, right? That happens throughout the work. I guarantee that if you open up that book and you get a sponsor and you do everything inside that book the exact way it says to do it, you will have a spiritual experience and you will stay sober. That I can guarantee. If it doesn't work for you, I promise you I'll fund your next relapse. But I also guarantee that after you get done with this, you will live a life absolutely beyond your wildest dreams. Today, I'm a full-time college. I want to leave you with a couple of amazing things that have happened. I am a full-time college student. That relationship that I burnt to the ground has now been rebuilt. We moved back in. We actually don't fight, yell, or scream. I have a job. I've worked in the bars for like the last 2 years, and I still work around alcohol and haven't had to take a drink. I have straight A's, and at one point I had a 1.6 GPA. My family wants to be around me. They want to talk to me, and they actually come up to me for suggestions and advice. Right? People in here actually like me. They want to be around me and they text me when I'm not here. That's an amazing experience, and it's a direct result of Alcoholics Anonymous. And most importantly, today, I don't have to sit around and worry and wonder and fear, anxiety, and all of those negative emotions because I have a God greater than myself that I can lean on and talk to in those low moments, in those scary moments. And I always have some way I always have the ability to connect to something greater than myself. So with that, I'll go ahead and shut the fuck up. Thank you.
Cardi, thank you so much.